First off, I want to say this is not going to be a traditional review like I've done in the past. This is going to be like a retrospective and just coming from the heart. I recently saw Clerks 3, and I'm going to talk about that at the end of this video. But before I get to that, I want to talk about Clerks 1 and 2 and the impact these movies have had on me as a Gen Xer. So let's go back to the beginning to 1994. As you can see, I'm a major Kevin Smith fan, and the reason his films are special to me is started with Clerks. This movie came out in 1994, and I was 17 years old at the time, and I remember a lot of my friends were saying, you have to see this black and white movie. They talk about Star Wars stuff, and I'm like, you kidding? What are you talking about? Because believe it or not, at the time, there had not been a film of just guys, teenage guys, just hanging out talking about Star Wars and just kind of bullshitting.
What did you like better, Jedi or The Empire Strikes Back?
Empire.
Blasphemy.
At least for my recollection, this was the first film that had ever done that. So I went to my Blockbuster, asked for this particular film. And of course, it was an independent movie and they only had one copy. So I put myself on the waiting list. And eventually, after a month went by, I finally got to see it. And I immediately connected to Dante and Randall, played by Brian O'Halloran and Jeff Anderson. And the reason I connected to the film is because these were guys just hanging out at work, just bullshitting and talking about movies. And that's exactly what I had done with my jobs back when I worked in the mall. Movies, dates, sex, fart jokes. That's all we talked about at 17. And that's why I connected so much to these characters. But deep down, I also related to them. And ultimately what Clerks 1 talked about was taking accountability and owning up to your actions. Dante, the entire time of the film, was saying, I'm not supposed to be here. But at the end, he finally understands that he's ultimately has a choice on where he ends up in life and where he's at. He can't be complaining or blaming anybody else, only himself.
Jesus, there you go, trying to pass the buck. I'm the source of all your misery. Who closed the store to play hockey? Who closed the store to go to a wake? Want to blame somebody? Blame yourself.
And as a 17-year-old, that resonated with me. And I totally understood that lesson. So amongst all the fart jokes and sex capades, there's a moral lesson that a 17-year-old can relate to. And I definitely related to that. Then you fast forward 12 years later to 2006, and then we have Clerks 2. And I really related to this one because at the time I was married, I had kids. And what I loved about this particular film, again, Dante and Randall are still doing their same thing, but they still haven't found their place in life. Dante, who is engaged to this particular woman, Kevin Smith's wife, I forget her name, he feels pressure to go with what feels safe and going with the social norms that everybody else does. Because if you think about it, I can relate to this. Everybody in their late 20s has this fear of like, I'm supposed to have done something. I'm supposed to have accomplished something in my life. I'm supposed to be married, have a house, have kids because everybody else is doing it. So I get that fear and pressure that Dante was feeling with this particular relationship. But deep down, Randall knew that this was not for him. This was something that he was doing just to feel safe. He wasn't doing what he wanted to do.
And you're not even throwing me over for a life that means something to you. It's just a stupid, hollow existence you think you should embrace because you're getting old or something. Because it's the kind of life everyone else goes after. You're a fucking drone, dude.
And I think that's a great question and a great place that everybody can relate to in their late 20s. What am I supposed to do? Go with the norm and play it safe or do what I want? And that resonated with me at the time when I was married because I truthfully felt at the time I was doing what I was supposed to do. But was I truly happy? No. Ultimately, at the end of that movie, Dante does make the decision to call off the engagement, does not move to Florida and work for that dealership. And the movie ends with Randall and Dante purchasing the Quick Stop. So now they're the owners of it. The movie ends on this poignant, like this is the first day of the rest of our lives. And the camera pans away. And it's a beautiful send-off. Like, hey, that's a happy ending. And again, that resonated with me at the time when I saw this in 2006. This takes us to Clerks 3. Fast forward to 2022 at Clerks 3. Now Dante and Randall are still at the Quick Stop. They're doing the same thing, playing hockey on the rooftop. But during their back and forth and just exchanges with the customers, Randall has a heart attack. And this is really inspired by Kevin Smith's true life events. Kevin Smith suffered a heart attack a few years back, and he was very vocal about it, how he almost died. He had what they call it was a widowmaker. And there was a 10% chance of him dying. And luckily he survived. So there's a personal stamp from his life events in this film. So Randall suffers a heart attack and he's in recovery. And then he's having just this reflection on his life. He's like, what have I done? I haven't done anything. I just watch movies all day and just bullshit with customers. I have not done nothing. What have I left behind? There's no legacy. So he goes, I have an idea. I'm going to make a movie about my life. So now we have a meta retrospective where Randall is making technically Clerks 1, but from his perspective. So again, you can see Kevin Smith's personal stamp in this film. And there's a lot of nostalgic beats within this film. There's a lot of recreations from part 1 that really hit me in the feels. Because again, I can relate to these guys because they're in their mid-40s just like I am. And there's something weird. I have to be honest, in your mid-40s, I've said this in lives, that you face your own mortality at 45 because you start seeing like comedians and people dying in their mid-50s and you're like, that's 10 fucking years away. Holy shit. So the thoughts that they're having and the retrospectives of what have I done? What am I leaving behind? Hit me because it's actually what we think about in your mid 40s. Because you realize, just like Dante and Randall, there are less days in front of us than there are behind us. Ugh. Now, I'll be honest, with Clerks 3, some of the humor doesn't land for me like it did in the late 90s. You know, fart jokes and butt jokes just don't do it for me. I'm a middle-aged man now, for Christ's sake. But the heart is there. What made these films special. The heart is present in part 3. And there is a third act that I did not see coming. And I will admit to you, I was in tears. I did not expect that type of poignant storytelling from Kevin Smith. And I will say, arguably, that is some of his finest writing and directing of all the films he's done. I'm a fan of Tusk. I'm a fan of Red State. I couldn't sit through Jay and Silent Bob rebooted. Believe it or not, I walked out of the theater. The humor wasn't there for me. Again, it didn't land. But in Clerks 3, this is some of, especially the third act, this is some of Kevin Smith's best work. And it had me in tears. And here I am a week later still talking about the film and thinking about it. Clerks 3 is a heartfelt goodbye to characters you've grown up with. And if you're a Gen Xer like me, here I am getting emotional. Shut up, Rudy. It hits home. And it was probably one of the most emotional film experiences I've had in 2022. Because again, Dante, Randall, Jay and Silent Bob, all these guys, I feel like I've grown up with them. And I feel like they're my friends, even though I've never met these guys. So to see that third act, it really resonated with me, and it's had a profound impact on me emotionally. Now, if you have not grown up with these films, you know nothing about them, you're going to see it as a mediocre film, like, whatever. It was kind of funny, and the editing could have been worked on here and there. And yes, those are all factual statements. I would agree with you there, but there's a lot of sentimental value in these characters. There's a lot of a nostalgia because I feel like these are my friends that I've grown up with. And to have the same emotions and to feel the same things at different points of their lives, it does resonate with me as a fan. Clerks 3 is not going to win any awards, but for the fans who the film was made for, you see the effort and you see the love in every frame, especially in that third act. And I, for one, Kevin, if you're watching, I want to thank you. You made me cry. And it takes a lot to make me cry, but you make me cry. And again, if you're a fan of the Clerks franchise, you have to check it out. And as always, everybody, I hope you enjoyed this retrospective look back. Again, I know it's a little different from my regular reviews, but I needed to talk about this film. If you like the review, please hit the like button. Please leave some comments below if you're a Kevin Smith fan. And please subscribe if you haven't done so already. I would greatly appreciate it. As always, thank you for watching, and please take care. Suchi Pooches.